All right. Welcome, everyone, to DWG's Technology Exchange. I'm Ted Hopton, and we're very excited that you've joined us for this edition of our DWG Institute's educational curriculum, where our mission is to guide you in your technology evaluation journey. I'm here with my co-host, Nicole Carter, and with the support from many of our DWG teams spread out across 2 continents.
Hi, Ted, and everybody joining us today. Our topic is technology-driven behavior change. We're looking forward to an enlightening discussion with our guests about how you can increase the value of your digital workplace with enhanced analytics and employee recognition programs. I think there will be some surprises today, even for experienced digital workplace practitioners, so I hope you enjoy the sessions.
I agree. I think we'll learn some new things. I find it hard to keep up with the ever-changing digital workplace technology marketplace, and I know I tend to pigeonhole products simplistically based on past experience, but technology providers have not been standing still, and the 2 we have with us today, TemboSocial and Swoop Analytics, are great examples of that. So before we dive into our discussions, I'll first hand things over to our technical producer, Rose Miller, to make sure everyone is set up comfortably with WebEx.
Sure, thanks, Ted. So hi everyone, it's Rose from DWG here. So just briefly, so we can get cracking on the exciting content today, I'll just go through some tech tips. We've all been kind of given a bit of a crash course in all things webinar at the moment, but just in case you're unfamiliar with the navigation. To set the WebEx to full screen, either go to the view button at the top of the WebEx, as you can see here on my screen, and press full screen in the drop down. Or if you aren't able to access the title bar, you can just click on the floating panel view icon, which you will see here on the top left of the participant panel. The best way to view the session, I find, is just to have the participant list and chat side by side with the presentation. And you can do this by clicking the side-by-side view icon on the screen here. If you want to participate, and we would love to hear your insights and reflections, so please feel free to do that. We do ask that you stay on mute because of the numbers we have, which is great to see so many of you here. But you can do that by submitting your questions in the chat panel, and we'll be monitoring these, and Ted and Nicole will pick those up later on. If you're asked to come off mute to speak to your question, then you will see the unmute option at the bottom of your screen. Last thing is just to please be aware that we are recording the session for future playback, and these will be published on the private DWG member extranet for ongoing reference. I'll be here throughout the session to help, so just message in the chat panel if anything comes up, and otherwise just enjoy the show. Back to you, Ted and Nicole.
Thanks, Rose. Now, let us set the scene and clarify expectations for everyone. We try to make DWG Institute events interactive, yet we also want to learn from our expert experienced guests, so we have to strike a balance. Today our main session will be 1 hour, covering quite a bit of ground and featuring 4 different speakers. So to manage the timing and flow of the program, we invite you to engage in the chat panel with each other and with DWG's Director of Knowledge, Shimrit James. Shimrit will also feed what's shared in that chat to Ted and me in the Q&A portions of the program. We'll start in just a moment with the voice of the practitioner. Then we'll turn to TemboSocial's integrated employee recognition solution for insights on how driving successful behaviors adds real business value. Next, we'll learn how Swoop Analytics' comprehensive collaboration dashboards are evolving into Insight Direction Data Engine to drive successful behaviors. After a quick recap, we'll close the main session. And then we're going to try something new, an optional overtime period, where you're invited to engage informally with our guests and each other. So if you're able to stay on beyond the first hour, you'll have an opportunity to dive a bit deeper into these topics or anything related that you'd like to share or get insights on. We're all here to help each other. So let's get started, and Ted will introduce the voice of the practitioner session.
Thanks, Nicole. One of the core concepts underlying the DWG Institute is a commitment to amplifying the voice of the practitioner in the technology marketplace. So we'd like to start each program with what we call VOP3, where we ask practitioners to share 3 things. 1 technology win, something you could help others with. 1 technology challenge, something you'd like help with. And 1 thing you wish technology providers understood better. So we asked each of you to share your VOP3 in advance by filling in a simple online form. Neil Morgan gets a gold star for being the first to fill it in. Thank you, Neil. In case you didn't get a chance to do this in advance, we'll put the link in the chat panel so you can do it afterward. Once you've shared the VOP3, you'll get a link that lets you see what everyone else shared. See how we did that? You give to get. These are connection opportunities for you. Who has a win that aligns with your challenge? Who shares the same challenge as you? Whose organization is doing something you'd like to hear more about? To enable peer connections, we ask you to provide your name, but that's not required. We still want to hear from you, even if you'd prefer not to list your name. Inviting people to connect on LinkedIn is a simple way to follow up with anyone you learn about today. And of course, LinkedIn enables you to control which invitations you choose to accept. So because of limited time today, we're going to ask just 2 practitioners to share their VOP3 on air during this session. But remember that once you've shared your own responses, you'll get access to everyone else's too. So let's start with Naomi Souza, Director of Presence and Assets at Real Foundations. Naomi, can you come off mute and tell us about the win you shared?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so when I was thinking about a technology win, the first thing that came to mind was that really with several years of practice, we at Real Foundations have gotten pretty good at using technology to get work done across distance. We can do that independent of an office, which especially right now is very important and useful because of COVID. So we use the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, specifically Microsoft Teams and Yammer, to collaborate, to share knowledge, and to get our work done. We use Teams for all work at Real Foundations, both for client delivery and all of our back office work. And as I said, I think with COVID, this was really helpful. This way of working is so fundamental to how we get things done that when COVID hit, we were able to very seamlessly continue working all from our homes.
Well, being able to conduct business as usual during 2020 is indeed a significant win. Now, how about your challenge?
I think, for us, both internally at Real Foundations, and we also help our clients work out loud, work across distance. I think it's really for us less about the technology and really about changing behaviors and getting adoption right. Change is hard. So less about the technology and more about driving change.
Makes sense. So if you could wave your magic wand, what would you like technology providers to understand better?
I was thinking about sort of drowning in data, and I think data can be very helpful, but we're all exposed to lots of data from lots of different sources. And so for me, I think it's better if you can summarize that data and give it to me with some sort of insight or action that I can take. So thinking about trends and benchmarking and things that we might try to get better desired behaviors.
That's good. I hope they're listening then, these technology providers. Thanks very much for that, Naomi. That's really useful. And we've been collecting these from a few people as they've been registering, and we've been asking people to fill them in. So we've got a little collection, and that helps with our providers, and it helps with our research as well at DWG. So it's really good that people have, provided that information. That's really helpful. Now we're going to hear from Chris Cucci, who's the Enterprise Community Manager at Rico USA. Chris, can you tell us about the win that you shared? Have we got Chris?
Chris, are you off mute?
I'm right here.
That's great.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. So
Yeah, we
listening
can
to
hear
Naomi,
you.
it sounds like our situations are very similar, right? Through our social intranet, we were able to break down those silos of departments, who's doing what, who is not sharing where they should be sharing, just to make everybody's job a little easier. If you have a process in place that works in one department, most likely it's going to work in another. So through that social intranet, and we're using SharePoint as well, modern and with Teams, we're able to get a more collective approach to our business, which makes it easier for everyone to do their jobs when you're sharing that information.
The thing that I was quite interested in this was about breaking down silos. So is that a great win? I think that's a great win that many companies seek to achieve. And I think we're going to bring you back later to speak about that when you get into your session with TemboSocial. So that'll be great. Thanks.
Right,
Thanks very much, Chris.
That'll tie right into what we're going to speak about with our recognition program.
Oh, that's
and how we do that. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for that. Because I think that's another challenge I think every digital workplace practitioner has faced. And there's probably people attending today who'd like to connect with you to share these ideas. Finally, if you got to wave a magic wand, what would you wish technology providers understood better?
The organization of content, because as Naomi was saying, data is everywhere. Just trying to bubble up content and search, so that way it's easier for our end users when we're sharing this information and we're posting these recognitions, when we're able to get it in a timely fashion, right? And it's not so, we hate to send our users into the weeds to find something, right? With all the data that we have, like we're a very large company, and it's a better way to bubble that up to the top would be great.
That's good. That's something else to add to our list and to feed back to people. So thanks very much for that, Chris. Thanks, Chris and Naomi. There's so much to be gained when practitioners sort of connect with each other, and like I say, we're trying to feed that back to our providers as well. So please do fill in your VOP forms that you would have been emailed if you haven't yet, even after the event, and we'll hope you find people that you can help and who can help you if you connect to them. Chris is actually pulling a double shift here today because he's joining, as we said before, he's joining both as a practitioner to learn and as a TemboSocial customer to share his experience as well. So we'll hear from him again in a bit. So now I'm going to introduce Stephen Green, CEO of TemboSocial. It's a leading provider of recognition and engagement software. Stephen built TemboSocial to help global companies engage their customers and employees to promote behaviors that improve business success. They have an impressive list of clients, including TD Bank, Bayshore Healthcare, BMW, and New Relic. So let's set you up to share your screen, Steve.
Great, thank you.
The first question I have for you to set the scene for people is, what problems does TemboSocial's digital workplace technology solve? It's an easy one to start off.
That is an easy one. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, so TemboSocial, we provide an enterprise employee recognition program, and for many companies, if you have certainly hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of employees, employee recognition is and should be a core business process. It's tied into employee experience, talent retention, motivation, productivity, and positivity in the workplace. So those are all core wins that every company is looking for. So what we did is, when we were looking at our program, we've been running enterprise recognition since 2008. At the time, people didn't really have modern intranets. They were disconnected. They were owned by IT. It wasn't really a tool for HR and communicators. But as things shifted and people started to buy these new, capable, modern intranets, the opportunity was to have people really use them. So we looked at this idea of enterprise recognition. We said, wow, what if it was visible? What if it was easy to use? What if the total cost of ownership could be reduced by having it inside the systems that you've already invested in? So that is what our story is about. Our story is taking enterprise recognition and being able to bring it inside of the digital workplace tools that you already have. So for the two practitioners we've already heard from Naomi and from Chris, they've gone through that digital transformation of enabling their employees with tools that they can access, from home. They seem to have that all, worked out, which is great. So if you're going to now introduce a new program inside the company that you think is going to positively impact the business, and you introduce it as another standalone separate destination, you have huge cost challenges around adoption. So what you can see on the screen that I'm sharing now is the way that we've approached solving that problem of recognition for the enterprise. So if you're using the Microsoft suite in this example, and this isn't a real company, it's River North Airlines, the pretend company. And if you have an enterprise recognition program, wouldn't it be great if recognition was part of the everyday experience, the music in the background of your digital tool set? So here, when I'm logged in as Cindy Newman, as the user logged in here, I'm seeing recognition surfaced, and it's curated. I'm seeing stories related to the people who I work with who report to me, where I can learn from their behaviors inside the digital tools.
So that's quite you know, front and center on one of the pages there, Stephen. It's not like hidden away.
It's not hidden away. So I log into the intranet, boom, I'm seeing stories of success and achievement from across the company. We have a points or an achievement system. I can see all the information related to that. If I'm in marketing and I don't go to that page, I go to my marketing hub, I'm going to be able to see stories here that are curated just about people who are in marketing. So it's context relevant in all experiences. And then the reality is that people spend a lot of time in other tools. So they're in Outlook. So you want the same program to span all of your digital tools. So here, I'd be able to say, oh, I meant to recognize Nicole. I'd just simply be able to, right inside of my Outlook, go in and say, oh, I want to recognize a person in the company, either we're tied into the profile directory. So the cost of running the program is so low. It's tying into the profile directory of the systems you already have. And as soon as an employee joins on day one, you don't have any separate admin process. Instantly, they're available in the recognition program. And then especially important with tools like Teams, which are really taking off in a huge, huge way, how do I have the same recognition program extend directly into my Teams environment? So with the solution that we've integrated, whether I'm on my phone or whether I'm logged into the Teams environment, I can access and I can send recognition directly from here. And it's all the same program. So if I have an enterprise program that has a points and rewards component, I'm in Teams. I can come into Teams. I can access all my recognition. I can even say, oh, hey, I got some points for doing something really well, and I want to come in, I want to redeem them. So you have the entire suite of tools you've already enabled your organization with, being able to deliver a core business process without any extra effort from IT, ongoing support from any technology group, and it's just visible, it's unified, it's easy to use. And that's the goal of any good program. And I think that Naomi really summed up really all I should have said in my whole presentation is what Naomi said. It's less about the technology, right? Like it shouldn't be all about new technology, my platform, my portal as a vendor. It's no, you've already made investments. How do we enable your investment? How do we help you open another store in your intranet mall so that more people will come and shop there?
Mm-hmm. So what do you say, Stephen, to people who think these sort of systems are nice to have sort of for generating feel-good stories and they don't give you that concrete business value?
Yeah, so we're moving into our second topic. So the reality of a recognition program, if done well, is that it's bringing huge value to the organization. So there's two use cases primarily what our customers look at. One is the idea of peer recognition. How is it that I'm able to recognize people in teams? How do I make people feel better? How do I address that esteem need of the individual person inside the company? But then how is it that I make recognition something that is public and visible where other people can learn from it? So a recognition program can not only reinforce your values, and values are high-minded and great. We want people to believe in our value of, diversity and innovation and, customer experience. Those are great. But, if you think about how those posters that get put up on your wall with your company values that have 25 words on them, it's a pretty intellectual experience from those people. So they read them and they see them, but they weren't in that 2-day offsite with the facilitator who went through the whole discussion to figure out what the values are and what they mean. So if you can take your program, and you can turn your, this may be a tiny bit small for people on the call here, so I'll click one more in. So what our customers are able to do is they're able to take recognition, build it around their company values, but then be able to layer on the behaviors tied to those values that actually drive business success. So every time someone engages in recognition, not only is saying, oh, recognizing someone for innovation, but it's around creative solutions or, one of the other behaviors that really will drive success. And then those stories are all, surfaced and syndicated through all those channels, through Teams, through Yammer, through Outlook, and you're able to have this massive syndication system that can put stories in front of people every day, all day, about behaviors that drive business success. So that's one area where customers are really seeing that recognition is a business value. The second one is around awards and badging and accreditation. So within the program, in addition to your peer recognition that is really, really important to have, you probably also have skills that people have developed that are assessed, formalized, evaluated skills. So when you can use the recognition program to also tie in and to highlight the skills and achievements and qualities that people have, suddenly it becomes a skills finder in the company. So, if I was looking for somebody who had done a product launch, for example, so I've been asked to do a product launch. I'm an employee. I've never done one before. So I can try calling marketing and hoping that they'll get back to me and so it will help me. Or I can simply come directly inside of this institutional knowledge bank of people who are tied to skills and experiences and be able to say, oh, I need to do a product launch. Hey, Michelle's done a product launch and she got recognized for it by Jason. Oh, I know Jason, he's a smart guy. He recognized her, he must have thought she did a good job. I can now go in, I can connect with Michelle and say, hey, I have this task. So leveraging network effects inside the organization to surface people who have skills and experiences, allowing me to find that person who can help me do my job better, really contributes to that idea of productivity and positivity in the workplace.
Yeah, so you're using like peer-to-peer accreditation to surface that expertise and make it, easy for people to find that. Whereas before we might have looked at profiles or things like that, and that's what most people do, look at even if profiles are that good, which in a lot of organizations they aren't, but it just gives another area for people to be able to find that type of information. So it's validated as well.
Yeah, just to clarify one comment you made, some of it is peer-to-peer, no question. So it's peer-to-peer, hey, that was really great, thanks a lot, you did a great job. But other parts of it is formal. So within the program, I can have the peer-to-peer where I can recognize someone for community or maybe something lighter and more fun. But then you can have nomination-based awards where you say, we're looking for the employee of the year and we'd like you to nominate a peer, and we'll select that peer based on our whole evaluation review process. So there's that part. And then there's the other part where you actually have people who have taken and achieved that SPC4 SAFE certification, and you can batch upload those into the system, and it will push out those notifications to people's profiles. So over time, employees are able to build what we call their social trophy case, where you're able to see the recognition that they've received, any awards that they've received, whether it's tied to years of service or some other formal type of program or those certifications. So you're combining peer-to-peer with formalized assessments, badging, certifications, and being able to create this knowledge bank that's available for everyone in the organization.
Okay. So I know you brought along Chris today to support you. He's a customer of yours, and so Chris is the Enterprise Community Manager from Rico USA, and he's going to share his story, how he's using recognition, using TemboSocial software to support behavior change and business impact, especially for the frontline delivery, which is, they're sometimes a bit overlooked. So that will be interesting to see that. Over to you, Chris.
Steve, thanks for setting that up. That is actually what we went to for TemboSocial, right? When we switched from our static intranet that had a separate recognition program, we went with something that we could put right into our core business process. So that way, when you log on in the morning, you get all your company news, but more importantly, as you scroll down, you get to see recognitions from your peers, from customers about your peers, but it's first and foremost right on top of our homepage. So that way, when something goes on inside of a department, you'll see it. You'll learn that culture. You'll learn how important these values are, and that it helps us drive our behavior into our platform and to our company. So that's a real important part for us, that we like to use this to, we have our values, but to go in there and have it show right on the homepage just shows how important it is to our end users and to our internal and external customers that this is part of who we are. So it's an extremely important piece to our network and to our social platform. So I'm going to show you one of our stories that we've received from supply chain, where it goes right to the challenges of today, right, with COVID here in the United States, how hard it is to get parts and how to get pieces in to support our customers. So you can see Mark is a field representative. He was at a customer site. Parts are hard to come by. Our supply chain does a fabulous job of getting these parts, getting them back to the customer, and then allowing the customer not only to be up and running, but also to support their community, right? And the best part of using these recognitions programs to do that. So it's a customer-centric piece of our core business operations. But not only does those three women here, as you see, get notified of that award, but their manager does as well. So their manager here, you could say, makes comments on that. So now you're recognizing individuals who are doing an outstanding job, but you're learning from that. It shows up here on the homepage of our world, which is the name of our social platform, but it also shows up on the supply chain department page. So now your fellow supply chain employees are seeing these values and these core processes and saying, hey, we could do this too, and this is how we do it. And that's how we kind of drive our adoption. I
was going to ask you about adoption. Yeah. I know that you've been working with TemboSocial for a while. I'm not quite sure how long, but has it taken a long while to get people to adopt that really and to start working with it?
No, so the recognition program was a huge hit, because I mentioned it yesterday. We feel at RICO that our best asset is our employees. So to get people to use the recognition program was easy. We started to morph it into driving our core business values as we grew with it. And Tembo has been a huge partner with that. And it's a natural progression from a static intranet, separate award program, social intranet, more collaboration. You see these recognitions, and then you start to choose. So here you can see there's different ones. We have different values. It's teamwork. It's customer-centric. But using all of it so that we're recognizing people for their hard work. We're getting input from the field and from our customers saying, hey, you guys are doing this really well. That comes back to us, back to those departments, where other employees of those departments could learn that, see it, and experience it, which is really important to us. And that's what we're always trying to drive that.
Now, I see that you use two-thirds of the homepage there, Chris.
Correct.
It's quite unusual, because most of the time you'd have a battle with news, really, to try and get that there.
So every morning when our employees sign in, they'll come they launch their browser, they come right to the homepage. They'll get our business updates, our news, but most importantly, they get recognition. They get to see we're a very large company. It's 20,000 people in the States, and to use these programs, it kind of makes that big company a little smaller. So if I'm looking at this recognition and I see someone doing something, And this is where it goes to breaking down that silo. Like I could see that recognition for them getting parts. And I'm like, wait, I need parts. Let me reach out to them. And I could be in a different department, but it's on the homepage. I could reach out to Robert here and say, hey, how did you do this? And I'm breaking down that silo from whatever department I'm in to his department in sales or service.
So as well as like that sharing of expertise, then people get to know other people, I guess, in other parts of the business.
And it makes it a little smaller of a company. It gives you that almost like hometown feel, right? Which I think again is huge because it's a big company, and I like to know. I'm a very social guy, so I like to know everyone. And when I reach out to you, I like to have a little background on you. And so when I'm talking to you, I'm not just talking to you as a customer, but as someone who understands what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Great. I mean, it just looks, you say that you've got positive customer feedback there as well. And so, I mean, that's coming in from external sources as well as, you know, through the internal channels. Correct.
Which is, again, so we're getting input directly from our customers saying, this is what you're doing well, and hey, let's build on that. So it's a very useful tool, and it's a huge part of our everyday. As you said, it takes up almost 2/3 of our homepage. So, and same thing for our department pages. It's individual, so specific for those departments to get those recognition just for supply chains, or just for marketing, and it's filtered for them. And again, that's how you learn those values and how to improve on them.
And probably a question that, you know, TemboSocial here, so you depend on how you want to answer that. But as you use that tool, and really you're the manager for that tool, do you find it good to work with, and do you enjoy that part of it?
So I've been a part of the team that's worked with Tembo from our original launch back in Jive, which was, I think I've been on the Our World team who supports the platform for 8 years. So probably, Stephen, maybe 5 years we've been using Tembo.
Yeah, that's right.
So again, it's very ingrained, and it's super easy to use. It's super easy to configure, which is even more important for admins who have to not only support the platform, but you're supporting these other tools, but it's all in one platform. So it's very easy to use and manage, and easy for the end users to use, to create one. So they would just, which is super important. Because everybody has a hard enough job to do as it is, right? Especially now with all the challenges. So to make something easy to use and very click friendly is nice. Yeah, we like software and solutions that are easy to use. That's thanks very much for that. You're very welcome. For that session, that input, Chris. That was great. You know, so I think now what we're going to do is have some questions. We have a few submitted. Sure. So if yourself and Chris and Stephen can keep your mics open, you maybe answer some of these. So I've got one here. Why is it important that these tools are integrated? For us, we wanted a one-stop shop at Ricoh for our employees to go and do everything. Right? We didn't want them leaving one system, going to another system, to go to another system. Right? We wanted all encompassed. We want them to come to our homepage, see the recognition program. Right from that homepage, you could click recognize someone, and you could do it right from there. And that way, you don't ever leave, because if you're leaving to go somewhere else, maybe that doesn't get done. But if it's integrated, it's as simple as from the homepage to completing it, it's 5 clicks. And 5 clicks, I mean, anybody could do that. No, that's fair enough. That's fair. Yeah. Well, another question we had, it sort of follows on from that, because has this solution resulted in any culture change? Or was it amplifying what was already there? Have you already got that culture of recognition and, you know, accreditation, or did that help with that? So not only does it help with the culture change of using your core values of your company, it does that, but it makes it easier to do it. So you are going from, you have your core values, you're using these to drive your recognition. So that's how we kind of... That's how you've done it. How about you, Stephen? Have you seen that in other organizations?
Yeah, I'm going to answer the previous question and this question.
Yeah, of course.
So for the previous question about the integrated part, so Chris covered off most of it. The other part that we're really focused on is, you know, we're trying to provide an enterprise recognition program, but we're also trying to drive sustained adoption of the digital tool. So every time someone gets recognized within the program and they get a notification either on their phone through their Teams app or their email or wherever else, people are clicking back to go in and see the story or comment on the story. And while they're there, they're in the intranet now. So with one of our other customers at World Bank, they did a presentation a while ago, and the recognition program was the #1 referral source for inbound traffic to the intranet. So that's another one of the key, business values for that. And in terms of culture change, yeah, again, the addition that I'll add is an example. Our program allows people to much more easily celebrate base hits. And often recognition programs that are somewhere else require it to be an extraordinary event that you're going to go and recognize. So as an example, if you're a bank and you have a branch network, and you have an employee a customer who comes into your branch and they have a heart attack and fall to the ground, and the employee hops over the wicket and applies CPR and saves the life of that customer, that's an amazing story. You want to tell that story widely. But what about the employee who comes back after lunch each day and instead of just going behind the wicket, stops in line and introduces themselves to 2 customers in a personal way, just before they head back in to start their shift? That behavior is something that is not as likely for someone to say, I'm going to go over to this disconnected separate portal to go and recognize them, but something that an employee would say, that really does impact the customer experience and builds our brand, and that story will more likely be told. And those base hits are what shape culture.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've got, sort of on the back of that, I've got slightly maybe technical question, but do you have an NPS or the Net Promoter Score program, and do you integrate that program with employee recognition, or do any of your clients do that?
Sure. Chris, do you have an NPS program in your environment? I'm sure you probably do.
We did with Jive, but not yet with SharePoint or Microsoft Suite.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you have to measure return on investment in another way, or do you is that just on?
That would be done not from. That would be more of an IT side question, and again, I'm front end.
You're doing it through the soft side, really looking at how people feel about it, and
right. I'm doing more of
the
right. I do the setup and the click-throughs.
Yeah.
IT does, and whoever this falls under a broader scope than just our world, and that falls under IT.
Measuring the value of your program, it's very dependent on the client. Different customers have different goals for what their recognition program is going to provide. So the way that you're going to measure and assess value, for example, today we win deals because of the integrated nature. It's not an IT project to deploy your program. And today, IT, work from home, IT people are equivalent to frontline workers in the hospital, right? They're in demand, they're critical to keeping the business running. So to say, hey, we need a project where we need a couple IT resources for 100 hours or whatever it may be, you're just not going to get them. So what happens is the program just gets pushed off. So there's a cost of operation benefit for some companies or core programs. There's an impact on the employee experience, whether we do, follow-up measurement. But each company is really its own.
Yeah, of course.
Ideas.
That's quite interesting, because we were talking about measurement there, and that's quite good for us because we're getting on to our next session now, which is all about measurement. So thanks very much for Chris and Steve's input there. It was very, very interesting. I'm sure people got lots out of it. But if people have got any questions, please still put them into chat, and we can pick them up again in the overtime session at the end of today's main talk, really. So thank you very much, Stephen and Chris, and I'm going to pass over to Ted for the next session.
Thanks, Nicole, and thanks, Stephen and Chris, for all you shared with us. Now let's turn to one of my personal favorite topics, analytics. Are you excited? This discussion will bring back Naomi Souza, as she's a Swoop Analytics customer. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Lawrence Locke-Lee. co-founder and chief scientist of Swoop Analytics. Lawrence has over 40 years experience as a researcher, technology leader, educator, and consultant. He's a leading practitioner in social network analysis for organizational change for clients around the world. And at Swoop, he's responsible for the science that underpins the Swoop dashboards. Lawrence, let's get you set up so you can share your screen. And while you're doing that, the first easy question I have for you is, to set the scene, what problems does Swoop Analytics digital workplace technology solve?
Okay, thanks, Ted. Yeah, and happy to be here. To understand Swoop, I guess with your introduction, you said I really specialise in organisational network analysis or social network analysis. And Swoop, we've just celebrated our sixth birthday now, but for 8 years before that, we were doing projects, just myself and my co-founder, Kai Kerr, were doing consulting projects on organisational network analysis or social network analysis, it's called. And we did over 100 projects in that 8 years, and we worked with many large organisations, and we understood that large, complex organisations really have trouble, the leaders have trouble understanding what's really going on. And they're always very surprised at what we could eke out in insights from what was really only a 5 or 10 minute survey that we ran. But I guess over those 8 years, we found that, the frustration was that most organisations only did one of these surveys every year or 2 years or something like that, whereas really what they wanted to be able to see this is nearly like every day. So when Yammer became more popular, once Microsoft bought it, we could see that enterprises were starting to use it, and thought there was enough data there to start giving them those sorts of insights. So we pivoted from a consulting company to a product company, and in fact, Swoop is actually, the name came from the fact that we knew what we were looking for. We went looking for data that showed us relationships. So Swoop is, we swoop in and more or less pick out the relationship data. And
that's great. That's great.
So that was the insights we wanted to bring. But the other thing we wanted to bring was we didn't want to just service the analysts or the people that were doing management reporting. We wanted to democratize this and said, well, look, really, all the individuals need to see this. We'd often produced our reports to management, and then they went through a whole change process. We said, well, wouldn't it be better if people saw that themselves first and it was totally transparent? So when we designed Swoop, that's what we were looking for. That was the challenges that we wanted to come up with. We saw that the analytics mainly were around how people were adopting the technology, not how they were talking to each other. And that's still largely the case today, that a lot of the analytics are around consumption. So in essence, I'll give you a very quick look at the dashboard. Just show you. So this is the Swoop dashboard. There's a lot on it, right? But as you can see, the network map, typically if you're doing social network analysis, you've got to have one of those. But even in the key statistics, you can see that we say, this is the things you do, but this is the things that people do back to you. And when you've got that toing and froing, you're developing a relationship. Now, also, with the democratization, you can see you can look at this data at a business unit level, look at threads or topics that people chat around, or you can look at your communities. We just changed that name for Yammer because now they're communities. And we also sit on top of Workplace by Facebook and Microsoft Teams, so the interface looks sort of similar. At the enterprise level, often the people running these programs are interested in how the organisation's bridging the silos, if you like, the formal organisation. So you can look at that in a sort of map mode as well. So how do the formal organisations, how do they interact across and so forth? But I wanted to go to the personas in particular. So this is something we designed in to say that we wanted to come up with a persona that described your interaction pattern. And when you start Swoop, you come into the personal tab, so you see your map and you see your persona. We also have this idea of a nudge where this person is doing so well they don't need a nudge, but we actually do give them little tips and so forth. But you can see a lot of the different widgets here you won't see in normal dashboards, the two-way relationships, the mention index, the give, receive, balance, the curiosity index, the diversity index. So these are really things that are drawn out of the relationship. So I want to drill down into the personas, because really what happened with those is that I should say that this is just to show some of the organisations are using Swoop now. And as I said, it's what we've found is that it is the bigger, more complex organisations that get Swoop. You know, most people sort of don't understand it when they first see it. But we've found that the big organisations that already have tried all the sorts of analytics sort of get it fairly quickly. They're saying this is what we're looking for. So I think this is our sweet spot. The big complex organisations are the ones that seem to see the value from the collaboration analytics, the types that we do earliest, as we see. But I want to talk about the personas because we design these to reflect a pattern of collaboration or interaction for the individual. As you'll see in the middle there, the engager is the person that can connect people, right? So what we say is they balance the give and receive. And we've actually got the persona as a woman. We actually did have a male there to start with, but we changed it to woman. And in fact, our research says that, well, actually, women actually network far better than men. In fact, there's far more engager women than there are males. So we thought we'd better change it around as well. But the catalyst is a little bit like a social media influencer, somebody who can attract a lot of attention. The responder is someone we call the caregiver, the people that look after people, make sure they get responses, they like things and so forth. The broadcasters are really what we'd say are uneducated executives who just want to tell a message and don't really care about responding to anything. And of course, the observer is mainly the passive sort of people. So we've got some real solid response to this sort of behavioural personas, and I'm happy to talk about those.
Hey, Bob, these are really cool, innovative things. I think let's try to get right to the chase for people. I think what people really want to know is what kind of business impact do these personas have? Have you seen that in your research to really back up the idea that this really cool, interesting concept really has hard business value?
Yes, Ted. Well, what really surprised us, we just designed this for everybody, if you like, but in fact, with our very first customer, they wanted to engage their leaders with them, and they wanted to show their leaders, the leadership team was actually a large bank, what their individual personas were. And what we found was that they started to develop this sort of competitive situation. So, in fact, this isn't the first customer we had, but many of our customers now are using the personas to educate their leaders. This is Syngenta. They're an agricultural research firm in Europe, quite a large one. They developed this leadership board, and as you can see that the Swoop personas are there. Of course, the names are blanked out, but they publish these amongst the leadership team, and what they told us was that the leaders were banging down their door, saying, "Well, how can I become an engager? How can I do better online with Yammer and so forth?" They started running leadership programs for them, and we've seen a lot of that. We've had some of our partners actually running coaching programs for leaders using the Swoop analytics, the personas to feed back on how they're interacting. So leadership's been a big one. This second one, Griffith University, is an Australian university that was using Yammer for their postgrad courses, and they did some independent research. They told us about it later on, and they said, we've had our hundreds of students and classes and what have you using Yammer, and we've been running Swoop analytics over the top of it. And what we've found is that there's a very strong correlation between those very constructive personas, the engaged and the catalysts and the responders, and the actual score that they've got. So this is really validates the fact that the way you behave online actually does contribute to how you perform in this sort of, I guess it's not an artificial, it's a real situation, but it's fairly rare that you get to measure performance in this sort of way. Another piece of research that we did that we found very fascinating was what was the impact of a CEO responding to one of your posts in Yammer. And this is a large telecommunications company, one of our early adopting companies as well. And they had a CEO who really loved Yammer. He really just got straight into it, a bit like Naomi's actually CEO as well, so they couldn't hold him back. But we had data that we could measure what the impact of his reply to an individual was and what the impact of the collective ELT, 25 senior executives, were if they were responding to someone. And what we found was that just the response from the CEO led to that individual increasing their interactions by up to 28% more per day and building their network 60% more. And when we included the whole ELT, the network even got bigger, 146% more, and interactions up 56%. And that's purely an executive, doing a like or a reply or what have you to somebody's message.
I love that data point, Lawrence. That's one of the things that I remember being able to observe anecdotally and just cobble together little bits of data to try to support, but I never had anything so comprehensive as this to make the case to the executives. But I think it's a great example of how it shows what's happening.
I had a friend who actually worked for this company. He actually told me a story about when the CEO responded to one of his posts and how excited he was. So they had 60,000 employees. So you get a note from the CEO. You're going to be pretty impressed.
Yeah, you would be. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I want to hand over to Naomi because Naomi's got a great story as well and how they've been using personas. So well, over to you, Naomi.
Thanks, Lawrence. I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes talking to you about how we use Swoop Analytics at World Foundations as part of our biannual review process to measure enterprise social collaboration. This is something that we've been doing for the last 2.5 years, and it's really helped us communicate to our employees the importance of working this way. We talk about working out loud or working across distance, working in our modern digital workplace. So I think that using Swoop and integrating that into our review process has really reinforced that this is just how we work, right? This is not like another thing or it's not optional. As I said earlier, all of our work happens in Teams and in Yammer. So just really quickly, context about our company that I think will be helpful. We're a very small company relative to what we've talked about today. We've got 400 people globally. We are professional services and we're focused solely on real estate. So for us, our mission is to make real estate run better, and our offering to the market is our knowledge and experience in real estate technology and processes. And so it's really important to our company that knowledge gets encapsulated, that it's not just in people's heads, that it's findable, and that our practitioners know how to find that knowledge and activate it so that we can solve problems more quickly and better for our clients. Before I just talk about Swoop, I mentioned earlier, we use Teams and Yammer extensively. We started using Yammer, I think, in 2014. This was before it was owned by Microsoft. It was a really grassroots effort to start using that for collaboration, and it really took off. We think about Yammer as our virtual water cooler. It's the place that you go visit every day virtually and see what people are talking about. And it's the place where you can go to ask questions when you don't really know who might know the answer to that question. And then Teams we started using in 2017. And as I said earlier, that is the place that we work. All of our work at World Foundations happens in Teams. We've obviously recognized a tremendous amount of benefits from working this way. I could talk for a long time about those, but in the interest of time, going back to how we use Swoop now to measure all of that activity in those two places, our entire leadership team still gathers twice a year, sometimes physically, now more virtually, and we talk about the performance of every employee at World Foundations. This takes place over the course of several days. So we're consulting, we've got a consulting branch, and so we talk about things like utilization, and we talk about qualitative stuff as well. But for every single person at World Foundations, whether you are a client-serving individual, whether you work in the back office, you get a work out loud score, and that's derived from Swoop Analytics. We're customers of Swoop both for Yammer and for Teams. And we take the total activity score for the review period, both for Yammer, we marry that with Teams. And for us, so really the personas that Lawrence talked about are really key, and that's what drew us to Swoop. So total activity is obviously quantitative. It tells us something, but we don't want to just rely on numbers, right? We care about the quality of the interactions that are happening in these places. So we have set expectations sort of by level in our company for these swoop personas. So for example, if you're a new hire, if you're somebody very junior, while you're getting comfortable, while you're learning, it would be okay for you to be an observer within Swoop. But as you get more experience, as you get more knowledgeable, we would expect your persona to evolve. And our senior practitioners, we want to see those individuals being catalysts and engagers, really starting to
this is great stuff. I'm just continually amazed, every time I talk to you about that, you've got this actually really built into the performance appraisal process. I think that's something many other organizations, should do, and there are probably many on the call who wish their organizations did it. So that's really cool. We're starting to run a little bit behind, so I want to jump to Lawrence. One last quick question for you, and if you can make this pretty quick, even though I know it's something key that we want to talk about, but we're running up on the top of the hour. Can you tell us about, how do you deal with people, making your data accessible? I'm a data geek. I love looking at that whole giant dashboard. I could do that all day, but lots of people find that intimidating. What are you doing to try to help it be accessible for all the employees that you're trying to reach?
Yes, well, Naomi probably mentioned it in her introduction that she would like to have a summary, and and you've seen our dashboard now. There's a lot of stuff on it, and we've done some customer surveys recently this year, and of course continuously saying it's just such a rich dashboard. We just don't know where to look first. Can you summarize it for us and so forth? And interestingly enough, we have been running benchmark reports for Yammer and for teams, probably for 6 years now with Yammer, and we do run these sort of project benchmarks where we will, for our clients, we'll say, well, how do you compare with the other 100 people in our companies in our benchmark database? And you can see up here, there's a little bit of a where you're below average and where you're above average on this particular dimension. Typically, what I would do is I'd look at that sort of summary, if you like, of your performance, and I would come up with, it's just like reading, the GP reading your blood pressure sort of results or something like that. I'd come up with some insights, and then I'd write those into a bit of a narrative, and they get a report. In essence, what we've decided to do is that we're going to automate that. We're a fair way down the track here. We're going to sort of automate that so that our benchmarking data gets brought into the platform itself. So every community, every team will be measured against thousands or tens of thousands of communities and teams, and we'll use that data, I guess, with some sort of AI technology and some rule-based technology, if you like, together to come up with these automated insights. So we want to lead with the insights. The first thing that Naomi will see is that this is what we think this is the insight that we have collectively, and this is what we think you should be able to do. And then we'll show the data as backup evidence to this insight. So we're actually turning the dashboard into, if you like, an insight engine. You saw we did have nudges in the platform already. They're going to sort of be accelerated and become much more sophisticated. And in essence, what we'll be aiming to have come out is something like this, where you've got key insights, key recommendations, and then a summary, which is going to say, for example, this is your team or your community score. This is how it's made up. And these dimensions have actually been drawn from the literature. So this is what we're saying, best practice. And you can see in our benchmarking reports, we've written a lot about this, what makes a high-performing community or what makes a high-performing team. It will tell you which decile you're in. It'll tell you which decile each of these dimensions are. So you can sort of see the summary, but, we're going to lead with this. So if all you want to read is this, it's there. If you want to drill into why are you saying that, it's there as well. If you want to go back to the dashboard and look at the individual widgets, you can go from that. So this is the way we're heading. We're going to lead with the insights and the recommendations, and we're going to give you that summary rather than the dashboard overall. So that's the direction, Tim.
That's very, very exciting and cool stuff. All right, we are at the top of the hour, and luckily we planned on an overtime session. So if you're able to stay with us, we'd love to have you come, stick with us. We're going to do a quick summary. We've got a number of great questions we want to get to that people have submitted for the Swoop Analytics folks. So we'll plan to push those into the overtime just to make sure that we can do those justice. But I do want to do a quick wrap up and invite one of our DWG consultants, Steve Binghall, to join us on air. And he's been taking notes for us and is preparing to write up what he's learned from this session. So Steve, can you come off mute and just share what your key takeaways are from the day?
Sure. I'm just going to, can you hear me okay?
Maybe get a little angry.
Steve,
get angry. Get a little louder.
Okay. I'm just going to share a slide with some of my findings. So I have to say, I think it's been a really fascinating session. I can't believe we've gone over the hour already. That was a very, very quick hour. So hopefully, can you start to see my screen?
We can come in.
Fantastic.
The suspense.
The suspense is getting everyone. So I'm just going to start. So I thought the first one, it was interesting when we were talking about with the VO3 elements and at the beginning, and we talked about I think Naomi said they'd sort of cracked remote working, and Chris talked about breaking down silos. And I think certainly during the pandemic, we found collaborative tools have really sort of upped their game and delivered a lot of the things they've been looking for. But I think Naomi sort of mentioned, what's the next stage of adoption, and how can we really drive behaviour change? And I think we're seeing that in terms of a lot of companies now thinking, okay, we've got the tools, how can we drive that more advanced use of those collaboration tools? So I thought that was very interesting, and obviously talking about behaviour change is very relevant today.
I think that's a great point for our kicking off our overtime. We can definitely bring that up as something to see if people want to dig into further. Tell us about the second one.
So it was really interesting seeing the demo for the Tembo solution, because what I liked about it, I'm quite a big fan of employee recognition software anyway. I think it has a really significant impact. But what I liked about that was that it was, there wasn't, it didn't matter if you were in the intranet or you were in Teams or even in Outlook. You would be exposed to this sort of great content, and it really. You remove a lot of barriers to adoption by having it consistently available across multiple
Absolutely.
places.
I thought that was a really cool feature as well. How about your third one?
Well, I really liked what Chris was saying. He said an employee recognition program has made a big company that little bit smaller. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's culture, but it really creates kind of connections. And I think actually the business value is pretty tangible. So we're talking about, surfacing behaviors and skills that we can use for in a knowledge base. This isn't kind of social, just kind of it's business focus. It's not purely just about engagement.
Yeah, no, it really brought home the whole people and relationships, and of course we're all kind of creating that now. Number 4.
Well, Swoop is kind of been for me, it's been a leader in doing this kind of relationship and social network analysis. I think many of us recognise that. And just looking at that dashboard, it kind of it sort of blew my mind a little bit, to be honest, because there was so much on there. And I know Lawrence was talking about how making that more more accessible through some of the dashboards. But it's very rich, and it's much better than the kind of consumption data that many teams are still focused on.
I agree completely. And then your last point.
And just, it's very interesting to see how these personas that kind of model these sort of collaborative behaviors can really drive leadership. They're being used in leadership programs, in employee recognition, or even in sort of formal kind of performance reviews, etc. I think it's interesting. People recognise themselves in how they're interacting with others digitally and in person as well.
Yeah, I agree. It really takes the data, starts to make it more relatable in a way that feels more human. and and that really helps a lot with the accessibility. Thanks, Steve. That was a great recap for us. And I want to thank everybody who joined us today, especially our guest speakers. So we've run a little bit over, but we planned on this with our overtime session. So if you're able to join us, please hang in here. Nicole, can you just tell us, everybody, quickly about a couple of upcoming events that are also being delivered by DWG that people might be interested in?
Yeah, of course.
I'm into overtime.
Yeah, I'm really pleased that so many people seem to be staying for the overtime session. So that's great, because hopefully we'll be able to continue to deliver something of value. But just while people get ready for that, we've got 2 events in September. So on September the 15th to 16th, we'll have our first two-day technology lab. So this is a mini conference online where we're going to explore the digital experience today. So we've got 2.5 hours each day, and the tech lab will be a hands-on, participatory and interactive experience. So it's going to be as close as we can get to the in-person event that we've all been missing. Also in September, we're hosting our 7th DWG 24 Live. So that's on the 30th of September into October the 1st, because it's 24 hours. So it's an online festival featuring live tours of digital workplaces from all around the world. Both of these events are free to attend, and we hope that you'll join us. You'll be able to register by going to our website, and we'll also send you links out after this event today. Now, please join us for overtime. Ted, do you want to kick this off?
Indeed, I will run with this to keep the lame sports cliches going. And the bad jokes are also a signal we've entered a less formal part of the program. So let's just pretend we've wandered out of the presentation hall and are now sitting down for coffee together to chat about what we just heard. And the speakers have joined us now, so we can ask them informally whatever we want and share our views on these topics as well. So just to manage the audio quality of the audio experience for everyone, we're going to ask you to stay on mute until called upon. And we'd like you to use the chat panel to let us know what you'd like to ask or say. And that way, Shimrit can help us coordinate who we call on, so we keep the conversation flowing. So I think we'll probably start with the questions from that we've got already for the Swoop Analytics team.
So I've got one here, Ted. Shall I just go with one?
Yes, please do.
So we've got a question from Priya at Prudential. She says, often the analytics are designed through tagging journeys and objectives based on assumed user behaviors. Many times the insights reveal a different user behavior than what was assumed. How do you move towards a model where there is minimal instrumentation? So it is in the chat, Lawrence, if you want to have a read of that as well, or do you want me to go through it again?
I'm just scrolling back up to, how far down is it? Sort of.
It was at 4:49, the time.
Oh, yeah, okay. Designed for tagging journeys, objects based on assumed user behavior. Many times the insights reveal a different user behavior than was assumed, where there is minimal instrumentation. I'm not sure what I mean by minimal.
Basically, how can you support measuring the sort of emerging behavior that hasn't been anticipated? So if you start looking at something that you weren't really thinking was going to arrive.
Well, I mean, I think from a personal perspective, I mean, the idea of the personas is that people adjust their behaviour when they see what persona they are, and we've seen that actually. So you might think that you're a catalyst, or you might think you're an engager, but if it comes back and says, well, actually you're a broadcaster, it's sort of like, well, oh, that's a bit scary. Why is that? And then it'll show you, well, you've made so many posts, you've not replied to anybody, you haven't got all that many responses compared to what you've done, and that's why we've determined you as a broadcaster. So in essence, all we're trying to do is nudge people to say, oh, and what we'll do in our nudge for a broadcaster is saying, have you ever thought about replying to any of those sort of posts that you've made and somebody sort of responded to you? Did you respond back? And typically, with a senior leader, they don't respond that much, right? They'll say, I'm telling you, you might post something back to me, you might even ask a question, but I might not even respond to you then because I've moved on. So I'm not sure whether that answers the question in terms of minimal instrumentation, but in essence, that's actually how it's been working, that it's sort of like you look at it, and it's real time. So it's sort of like you might be an engager this month, and then you might drift into being a responder. You might be happy with that. I mean, I've personally become a responder at times, and I've said, yeah, well, I know I haven't been as active. I've responded in terms of replying and liking, but I haven't put too much in. And sometimes I'm happy with that because that's the cycle that I'm in. So it really needs to be a no.
People like to do those sort of surveys as well and find out, what someone else thinks and get that sort of validation or not. And I think that would be really interesting in organisations to be able to do that. And like you say, find out that you thought you were something and then you turn out not to be, and then you can change your behaviour if that's what you want to do. We've got quite a few questions coming in. Do you want to go with another one, Ted?
Yeah, we've got another question. Basically, and I'll read here. All these stats are great, and I like the different personas, but I'm interested in what decisions are being made with this data. Does it mean you change content, train users to move from one persona to others? Is the ROI on these stats based solely on engagement?
It wouldn't be. I mean, engagement's an important part of that, but I mean, clearly, when we look at, for example, a good example is the team space, where we've done quite a lot of research on what makes a good team, and we've got guides on what does good look like. I guess we have guides we call what does good look like. It's not always just engagement. For example, interestingly, team size is an important thing in terms of a team performance. So, the research tells us that any teams that get beyond 10 people, your productivity drops. Now that's sort of, from a social network perspective, that's pretty obvious, because the bigger the team is, the harder it is to connect with everybody. So that's not necessarily an engagement thing. That's a structural thing, nearly. There's, I guess, the Amy Edmondson psychological safety sort of thing. There's a lot of things around, when is it safe for you to be participating? And we look at things like, we call it diversity. It is diversity of thought. But we look at situations where we've got people that have joined many groups or a member of multiple teams, so they're bringing different perspectives, but they're also asking questions. So we see that where there's free flowing of questions and there's a diverse audience, that this is a more psychological safe place, and it's not necessarily engagement. That's actually diversity of experience and curiosity, if you like. So it's not only about engagement. So in terms of how do we know that having done all of these things and you've got great engagement, that real results are happening? Of course, we can't see that other than, the way we find that out is that in our benchmarking reports, we use our metrics to identify who we believe are high-performing teams, communities, or organisations, and then we actually go back and we talk to them, and we actually interview them, and we interview them about the teams that we've identified, and often we'll get case studies. So if you look on our website, it's full of case studies, and that's our validation as to, what we're seeing is what is good is actually good. So, and some of those case studies will have, the ROI, this is what we got back. I showed the Griffith University example because that was one of the rare situations where a customer could actually measure something so precisely as a student score. That's pretty rare in business. You get something that clear, but nevertheless, we do see those sorts of ROI stories in our case studies, and it's not because of Swoop only. I mean, often it's just the way they use the underlying platform, whether it's Yammer or Teams or Workplace by Facebook. So it's bigger than that. But the case studies do hold those, and we use those as our way of validating what we think is good is actually good. But we also draw on the research. So the research has been done with, admittedly controlled environments where they've been able to demonstrate a tangible delivery. So we draw both from the research, but also our own benchmarking research as well.
Very interesting.
Great, thanks, Love.
Yeah. Steve, I saw in our little back channel that you've got a question. Would you mute yourself and share it? I think you've got a good angle we could look at.
Yeah, I was really interested in the employee recognition capabilities on the TemboSocial platform. How easily can you mix kind of like sort of peer-to-peer recognition and then also top-down recognition, from like a managers or even from senior managers? And how do you mix them within the product? And do they often sit nicely together, or is it sort of a bit uncomfortable because they're kind of slightly different? I'm sort of interested how clients have sort of worked with the platform in that respect.
Yeah, so from the TemboSocial side, I think I'm unmuted, right? You're hearing me? Yeah.
Yep.
So one of the goals of the program is to help managers be better managers. And managers would give more recognition if they were aware of the things that the people who report to them are doing. But a lot of things that happen are outside of their view. So the way that our program works is, recognition may start off on a peer-to-peer basis because you help me, I recognize you, but our system, because it's tapped into the profile directory, will automatically notify the manager. They'll say, hey manager, here's a digest of all the people who report to you who got recognized over the last calendar day. And the manager can then jump in, like we saw with that example that Chris showed with his example. There was a peer recognized someone else. The manager got notified through the system that their employee had done something that was value add. And then they jumped in with the recognition to say, hey, great job. And we even see that with, tied to what Lawrence's research was showing, where you have right up to the C-suite. So ours will bubble up. So we had a story that was at TD Bank where an employee went out for lunch in a small region, remote from downtown Toronto, where the head office is. And they were standing in line, and there were 3 teenagers standing in line with a burger joint. And one of the people standing in line, pulled out his Scotiabank card to pay with lunch, and 2 of his buddies pulled out their TD Bank card. And they were just teenagers. They were bugging each other, and he said, "Oh, you shouldn't even be able to, be in line." And they were pushing the kid with the TD card out of line, just joking with them. But this employee from TD, who's wearing his TD pin, is actually standing in line behind him. And he speaks up and he says, "You know what? TD Bank is going to buy his lunch." So, it's a really great thing that happens in total isolation. So this guy goes back and he self-submits a story. Hey, I was at lunch today and this happened and this is what I did. So you can self-submit stories as well within the recognition program. And all of a sudden, it got a lot of traction and people started to, respond to it to the point where the CEO at the time, Ted Hockey, came in and he commented and he said, "Great job." His name was Stephen. "Great job, Stephen. Keep up the good work." That's all he said. But boy, this is from the CEO of the bank. Yeah. So this guy goes in and changes his name on the social media platform. So he changes his nickname to Steve Burger Boy, because now he's like got all this cachet around this. And he has this profile on his social trophy case, on his My Thanks, that shows his comment from the CEO. There's a huge amount of pride proving that this recognition program isn't just for peers to recognize peers, and all the senior managers hope that it keeps them satisfied and happy. It's actually an opportunity to have these stories bubble up where managers and managers of managers up to the CEO can jump in and add their commentary.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Stephen. That's a great story to share with us.
Yeah, we like stories.
Yeah, we like stories too.
Well, how are we doing here? We're in our overtime. We're experimenting. We're innovating. I think we've got most of the questions that were queued up addressed. So it's really up to you all whether you'd like to continue, what you'd like to talk about if there is further interest in pursuing this. But if there's anybody still on the call who wants to bring up something, let us know in the chat, and we're happy to do that. And if we've run our course, then that's fine too. So,
Ted, I've actually got another.
Any thoughts there?
Ted, I've actually got another question.
Go for it, Steve.
Again about recognition. So, just all these stories. Did you find a lot of obviously during the pandemic, there's been loads and loads of stories, often inspirational, of employees going out of the way to help others, help people in the community. Did you find that the platform was being used a lot for that kind of purpose? Did you find even more? Was there more usage during the last 3 to 4 months?
Yeah, so as Chris had mentioned, the platform is highly configurable. So you don't need to be able to just respond and add in content categories. So Royal Bank added in a category in their program that was just around what people are doing during COVID to help each other and help customers. So, an umbrella type of a category, our customers and colleagues are all, getting this wash of COVID down on them and it's changing their life. How are we holding that umbrella over our customers and coworkers to protect them? So absolutely in that case, but what is probably the most common theme that came up across our customers is how the IT department got recognized just like you were seeing out in the public around frontline workers. Within companies, suddenly people were saying, without IT, I would have been stuck at home, not able to service my customers, not able to get my work done. They enabled me with the tools that I needed. So I think that during COVID, inside of companies who had digital tools that are collaborative and recognition programs, I think they were seeing a real increase in the acknowledgement and recognition being directed at those IT frontline workers.
Thank you. I've got a question. How is money linked to the recognition system? Is there, that sort of return on investment? Can you get figures and data for that?
Yeah, so nobody has reliable and good figures related to the spend on points and prizes tied to recognition. In fact, trying to find independent research on that that's not vendor driven, I think you're going to have a hard time finding that. So our approach actually is, how do you deliver a recognition program that doesn't rely on the monetary part? So the reason why you need the monetary part a lot of the time is to incent people to go and use a tool that's not readily available to them inside the environments they're already going. So if you have your recognition program like Rico's, it's right inside of your intranet when you log in, you don't need to say to people, hey, I'm going to give you, money to participate. And quite honestly, if I allocated my budget, if I have 10,000 employees and I allocated $25 per employee per year for recognition, you're now looking at a massive budget of hundreds of thousands of dollars just to deliver $25 possibly to people. And that is not going to keep anybody in their job. No one's going to say, I was really unhappy here, but I got $25 and now I'm really happy. Mm-hmm. So, but if someone says, hey, I got recognized today, and I got recognized again, and my manager heard about it, and it's spread, and building this social trophy case where people can see that other people value the work that I do in a public, visible, accessible place, people will feel satisfied because we know that this is it's on Maslow's hierarchy down at the foundation, right? People need to feel needed and valued.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, so a nice, really great question in the chat from an old friend. Russell, if you're still on, do you want to join or did you have to drop off? Let me see. If you're there, we'd love to have you unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I won't put the video on because it's chaos behind me. I'm used to the Teams blank out screen. So yeah, it's just something that I was just looking at the sort of personas. It's something that I saw with some of the gamification platforms in Jive and in Bunchball and things like that. And it was people actually sort of they scammed it a little, so that they were deliberately doing behaviours that they knew would get them to the front of the leaderboard in terms of sort of like, I'm a top whatever it was that would sort of like put as the winning point. I've reached level squirrel or whatever. I'm sort of like I'm now bear or something like that because they'd gone through. And what we actually looked at it, we thought actually what they were doing was sort of like almost manically clicking away to get themselves up that leaderboard. And I'm just wondering whether that's something that's been seen with the personas, where somebody says, I don't want to be a broadcaster. So they're responding to questions, but they're not really doing it in a sort of a proper way, so to speak. They're just trying to leverage it to a different direction. Does that make sense?
What do you think, Lawrence? You're on mute there, I think.
I'll go off mute.
No, it's a valid question, Russell. It's sort of, we used to get asked this a lot with our project work as well, and we used to say in organizational network analysis, but one of the main things we measured was how many people nominated you as somebody who was important to their work. Now, to do that sort of in a survey sense, it was very hard to, you'd have to go campaigning and so forth, and very few people bothered. So we never really found that. No doubt on the online space, it's a little bit easier. So if you consciously decided that you're going to respond and what have you, I guess you could maybe change your persona if you put enough effort in, for a period of time. But it's not only the persona sort of measures as well. We have other measures that collectively sort of paint a picture as well. And I think it would probably show out if that was the case. But there's no doubt if you're determined to change your persona artificially, you could probably do that. But what we've found is that who's got the time? Who's got the motivation?
Yeah.
Maybe if even Naomi's probably still on the call. She might answer that. If people know that, but in the performance appraisal, it's not a single factor. And if you're the sort of person that games things, well, I think other things will show up. Maybe Naomi can speak to that. If she's still on the call, but what we find, what we find.
That was a great question. I think we thought the first time that we published the benchmark right before the biannual performance review. And I think we thought, well, people are going to see this and they're going to go like 1,000 posts just to get their activity score up, right? But I think, Lawrence, the personas sort of help balance that out. You could up your total activity score, right? But if you just have a bunch of likes, or what we have seen with a couple of people is they go post a bunch of stuff that's not really useful or helpful, or maybe not even relevant, and those posts get no likes, they get no engagement, and they end up being a broadcaster probably, right? So I think there's we had a little bit of fear that would happen. We haven't really seen that happen. We do see people posting things that aren't really collaborative or aren't really helpful, and that sorts itself out because they get a broadcaster persona, which is something that we really try to discourage.
Yeah, the engagers, there's a balance in there. So you can't just get there by just doing more stuff yourself. You've got to get stuff coming back to you. And if you're putting rubbish out there, people don't respond.
Yeah, it's a two-way process. So you've evened out some of those anomalies. That's great. Yeah. Well, that's a great point to end on, because we're out of time now. So it's been a very quick 1.5 hours. So thank you very much to everybody that stayed on. I'll hand over to Ted for some closing remarks.
Yeah, this has been excellent. I really appreciate everybody who stayed on for overtime as well. This is our first time trying it. We hope it was valuable. We'll be sending a survey soon to learn what you thought of this experiment. So please do tell us the truth and any ideas how we could improve it, as well, of course, how to improve the technology exchange experience overall. So we do hope you join us for another DWG Institute event soon. And thank you, and goodbye, everybody. Thanks again.
Thanks very much. Thanks to everybody that's presented. Bye-bye. Bye.